I'm Peter from Catamaran Mentor. In this full tour of our catamaran, I'll walk you through the entire layout and key systems, rigging, lithium, solar, inverters, engine rooms, additional autopilots, many comfort, safety and performance upgrades, and you'll clearly learn what makes a long-term liveaboard offshore cruising catamaran, so you'll know exactly what to look for when buying or refitting a catamaran. So right now we're in the rear cockpit and we're going to show you what we've done to it and what makes this boat special. So it's just a nice layout here. It's just a lot of space, and you know, again, that's why you buy a catamaran. I will show you a negative aspect first. Is this table? Look, this table's so big that it's hard to get in here, but certainly a nice table once you're actually sitting here eating lunch and enjoying such a good view, but not very convivial and not very good flow. So what a lot of Leopard 48 owners are doing, I haven't got to it yet because you'll see that I've been busy doing other things to this boat, but you can pull this table out, give it away, throw it away, and just replace it with a nice wooden table or a table that folds up and then makes this beautiful area a lot more easier flow. In reality, it actually becomes our garage, and quite often it's messy with the current fixing or upgrading project happening right here. The other thing that I really like about this rear area is we put these additional side clears on it. I stopped short of fully enclosing it, some owners do, but with these side clears we were spending the money elsewhere, and they keep 99% of the water or rain or wind out of this area, so you can fully leave tools, equipment, laptop on this table and the rain will stay out. If you're on anchor, if you're in a marina, then the wind can blow in the back, because on anchor the boat will turn and pivot into the wind and all the wind and rain just goes past it. We have a little cockpit refrigerator here. I added an extra storage compartment here which I use for the dinghy saltwater washdown equipment. Here's the helm. Oh, she's a beautiful helm. Got a lot to talk to you about there. We'll come back to that soon. More seating. You'll see here is a big 100-metre section of nylon, 22mm nylon rope. When we're going down to New Zealand, that would become our drag device if we got caught in horrendous winds. We would put that out the back and she would stop the boat from surfing out of control. Here we fully upgraded the galley, but we have kept gas cooking for the barbecue grill, and here's the 2 gas bottles. And with the amount of solar we've got on board, these 2 4kg gas bottles virtually lasts, I don't know, 12 or 18 months. But of course it depends how many sausages you cook on the barbecue. Here is a storage area under here, which I use for spare fuel tins, oil changing type equipment, some spare lines, and the breakers for the 110 volt shore power are in there as well. And this is where the life raft was, but I moved the life raft because right here's an engine. Well, as if this was all on fire, how would you be getting the life raft out of there? That could get a bit dodgy, but of course that's a very low chance of happening. And I did mention 110 volt shore power. There is 110 volt shore power inlets here, and behind us, if Yogi swivels around, here is the 220 volt shore power. So this boat can be plugged in New Zealand or in the USA. The main part of the boat to generate it is 110 volt, but we have dual power systems and inverters on board. I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail later. We have a very nice tender davit system here. Again, for redundancy in remote places, I've added extra blocks, a spare line here. So if this winch motor here fails, then I can quite easily raise and lower the tender with these blocks here. It also helps you if you're on the hard. You can put your tender down without needing to get the boatyard to bring a forklift over or anything like that. So you can put it down, you can do some tidying or repairs or upgrades to your tender, and electric winch tender is operated there, and there's a little switch here that will cut it out when it's fully up if somebody didn't know how to use it. Very nice system. I've added additional storage area under the helm. There's a massive area under this helm area, so really nicely cut it out, put this cabinet door into it, and in here we've got redundancy gas cooking top, and we've got some oil, we've got some life vests, and offshore safety clips. Popping on. And some household pegs, just good old boring living on board stuff. And there's still a lot of space in there available. I've also added another little storage hatch down here, which is kind of a access to get into that big storage area. And I can get my rubbish bags there. There's some scrubbing brushes, brush and shovel, stuff there. And over here we've got some of Coco's toys. We put these fishing rod holders in there, and 4 fishing rods really nicely go in there. Here is, talk about redundancy, remote places. What happens if our nice big tender gets stolen? Well, there's a 2 horsepower Yamaha outboard here under a nice cover, and we have a inflatable tender on the front, so we actually have a redundant tender and outboard, and we have used it on the Gold Coast, and we've also lent it to another cruiser, so it's actually come in really handy. All the stuff you need going to remote places. We've also got the fake flexi teak flooring in here, which makes it really nice to walk on. There is the helm. Lots to talk about with the helm, but I think you guys want to get a feel of the layout first before we get too caught in the technical details. So we're going to come back to the helm and the tender later in the video. So let's go into the saloon. And there is a lot to show you going on here. Let's do some of the simple layout. Just a nice big table here and space. Sit here on passage, watching TV. I have the radar on my iPad. I have a timer going. I'll be watching a movie. In the Pacific, you can be a little bit slack on your watches, but you've got to do that carefully. In Asia, absolutely not. You're on the helm 100%. But in the Pacific, I will rely on the radar alarms a little bit, and then I set a 15-minute alarm away from me, and that's when I get up and I check the boat. And it's amazing how much you can enjoy a video and a movie and stay on shift in the Pacific. But if you're coastal cruising at night, too many boats around. If you're in Asia, too many boats and obstacles around. So, but I'll often sit here, iPad on, watching the boat, watching a movie. Pirates of the Caribbean, of course. Arr! Captain Jack Sparrow.
Giselle.
Who was she?
What? I may have deserved that. Anna Maria.
I suppose you didn't deserve that one either.
No, that one I deserve.
Let's start off with the galley, because that's so important for life on board, and we have done a lot to that galley. So the first thing, this is again the difference for a long-term liveaboard boat really shows up in the galley, and this is where we've spent a lot of money on Coco. Firstly, for a long-term liveaboard, we're real foodies. We make and eat a lot of food, and we found it really hard to live on board without a dishwasher. Coco's got so much solar, inverters, powers and generators that it's very easy to have a dishwasher on board. So we revamped the kitchen to add a Fisher & Paykel dish drawer on board it, and we absolutely love that. It's also a place where you can put your dirty dishes as you're making them, so it keeps the counter space available for preparing food. The other thing on a Leopard 48 that sorely needed upgrading, that would just drive you bonkers for long-term living aboard, is the amount of counter space. It's not enough. So you see the shelf here, we added that as an addition. A guy Terry at Northland Boatyard did a great job at adding the shelf. It's all nicely wood. It's built in like it was always on the boat, and that's given us space for the electric oven, a bread maker, an electric kettle and toaster. The other thing that makes it comfortable is you want a hot cup of tea, you don't have to wait for gas to boil. You just bang a cup full of water in that, done, you're having a hot drink. And toast is easy. There was a gas oven in here, but I think we used it a couple of times, Yogi?
Oh God, yes.
But the way I describe a gas oven is, I bet there's some cruisers that really make a gas oven work, but to me and Yogi, you need a PhD in witchcraft to operate a gas oven. So we pulled the gas oven out of here, we put additional drawers in there, and we added the bench top, and then this is now a 35 litre oven and rotisserie, and we do pizzas, chips, roast lamb, roast chicken, roast veggies, and it just really made Coco feel really home-like, because when you're out here month after month, year after year, you need those additional comforts. And okay, back to a holiday boat. Maybe you wouldn't invest in that in a holiday boat because you go back to your house. Oh, okay, we've had our fun boat trip. You're back in your house. The house is on a dock. The boat is on a dock. Whatever, but there's just not enough bench space. So that's an example of the comfort upgrades you need to really exist long term on the boat. And we've got a 2-burner induction cooktop here. For redundancy, I also have another plug-in 2-burner electric cooktop, and we have the gas cooktop, and we have the redundancy of the gas grill outside. So we've got all the benefits of an electric galley, plus we've got the redundancy as well. We have a microwave. This fan was back over there. We just upgraded it, brand new, just the other week. Really nice fan. And we put a new sink tap in once when I was refitting. I pulled the sink out. I've redone that sealant really well around it. We have a charcoal underbench filter under here, and this is a nifty little upgrade. There's this lid here. This is the dish drying drawer or hatch, whatever you want to call it. But this lid just lifted off. Like, where do you put it? You might be at sea. Like, you put it there, it'll slide off and hit you on the toe. So I put some hinges on it. I was helping someone buy another boat, and I got this idea off that boat, so I went out and installed it. It's got a little latch here, and you can dry your pots and pans in there, because we still have to do our pots and pans. They'll go in the dishwasher a little bit. Nice little pop the hatch, and it closes, and it's back to being a place to prepare your drinks or your vegetables. So that is our galley, and because while we were at putting the dishwasher in, we reskinned it. This was all the cherry wood colour that Leopards have. The newer Leopard 48s have the oak ash interior. Now, I would say the oak ash looks a little bit more modern, but now that we've modernised Coco with this cream white galley finishing, we've got the benefits of the warm wood matched with the modern white interior, and I feel like we've got the best of both worlds, because the newer oak ash interior seems very plastic and IKEA-like, but we've got the warm wood cherry look, and we've got the modernised, so we've kind of got the best of both worlds. So here is the nav station. Again, for safety, we've spent some good money in this nav station. I put a chart plotter here. A lot of boats, when you're looking to buy one, don't have a chart plotter here. I would often put GPS coordinates in here at night, check my waypoints, just take a breath, and see that the situation is good. I could also be making a cup of tea, and I could glance at the radar if we're in a high shipping area. There is an autopilot control head here, so if the wind's changing a little bit, we can go plus or minus a few degrees and control the boat from there. And our original VHF. There is also the old school Iridium Go satellite device over here, and it has an external aerial, but nowadays with Starlink that's on board, that's replaced it. I think if I was crossing the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, or I was one of the really big crossings, I would simply just have 2 Starlinks on board. So I'm not sure that I'll ever use that again. You know, there's parts of an HF radio here that just never worked. For redundancy to our Starlink, I use a Garmin InReach, which is clipped onto my offshore vest as well. Bit of a storage area over here. And you need to rotate probably back over to this position, go to camera. In this spot, I have a lot of my light oils for anti-corrosion. Lots of spares, like lots of hose plugs. There is spares for Africa on this boat, which is the difference between a long-term boat. And let's take you around here. Here is a fridge and freezer. Here is our main breaker board, which is sort of a bit of a control zone for a boat. There's the generator control. A little tip here is when you're in the rainy season, the generator hours will add up quite quickly, so I put a note on that. I also have a Google spreadsheet for my generator servicing, but I just put an extra note because it can add up quite quickly. But our generator is only up to 5,000 hours, and we brought her 6 years ago with 2,500 hours. That's because of the large solar system on board. We don't have to use our generator much. I will tell you later why I think a generator should be important. There's 2 inverters, and there's the 2 controllers for the inverters. Air conditioning is controlled there, and all your 12 volt, 110 volt breakers are there as well. Here's Yogi's favourite thing, the coffee maker. And over here we have a laser printer and the Starlink router there. Just such a good space. And now, so much space you could actually spin a cat, but I don't have a cat, so I'm going to spin Liam's teddy bear. Look at this, all the space, so much space. Oh, how would I actually use it? I would actually use this space to do yoga at night. I like to do yoga in the morning and night for relaxation. And when I brought a Leopard 48 compared to the 40-foot catamarans, I was particularly aware of this space that the 48-foot catamaran gets you in here. If you're looking at 41-foot catamarans, you know, your galley benching's all jammed right up in here, and your seating's jammed right up. And this is where the hull length adds space to the living on the boat, particularly right here. It's noticeable. Before we go down, I'll show you one of my favourite features for the Leopard 48, and that's this front door. There's just so much breeze. It's hot and tropical right now, and there's just a steady breeze flowing right through the boat, through the rear salon. And I remember it to this day on our sea trial when we were buying Coco, just how much breeze come through that front door. Now, some people are saying, "Williams, if the forward cockpit fills with water," my feeling of 10,000 miles in Coco is there's never been a wave in there. But if she was, I think she'd handle the weight easily. And then additional to that, there's a huge drain in the floor of the cockpit that would get the weight out very quick. And if you're operating a catamaran like this and the weather's starting to get heavy, you really need to turn off the waves, put the waves on your rear quarter, start towing a drag device and heading downwind so none of the waves are threatening the windows or the structure or getting on your deck anyway. A catamaran like this handles massive waves going downwind or with it on the quarter towing a drag device. So I'm not worried about the safety of the forward cockpit. My favourite thing about the forward cockpit is this door and the airflow for it. I've babysitted other people's boats now when they go back home and they're in the anchorage with us. And I go on their catamarans to open them up, air them out, check their bilges, etc., etc. And they're just stifling and stuffy. And I just don't think I could own a catamaran that doesn't have a forward cockpit door like that. So it's a real big bonus. So here we'll go out to the forward cockpit. Yogi, you're going to have to go up on the deck and turn around.
Yeah. It's a nice view today.
God, it's a gorgeous day out there. So yeah, this is the forward cockpit seating. We don't drink a lot, but man, it'd be a good place for some gin and tonics. We've had one New Year's Eve out here with some friends. Yeah. Really layering it up, but most of the time we've had Coco. We're also parents to Liam, and he's been growing up, so you don't drink much when you've got a small child, do you? But obviously a great drinking area. There's some tabletops here that come up, and under here is where I store my dangerous goods, because this locker actually has a vent to the outside, not a vent to the bilge, so you can put some dinghy fuel in there. If you had any alcohols on board or cleaners, I put it all in there. But I have noticed it does have to be in plastic containers. If there's metal containers in here, that will rust. There's just enough sea air up here, or maybe some spray gets down on passage into that area. Here's where we store some of the additional fuel tins, and their cockpit drain is under there. Now a Leopard 48 problem is that cockpit drain does crack a little bit. It wasn't quite installed from them, but I've fiberglassed that up. If you buy a Leopard 48 without that done, I would bet you a reasonable sum of money that you'll be fiberglassing that up at some stage. All the little Leopard 48 quirks are out of this boat. I've got a whole list, and I see all the owners doing exactly what I've done to this boat over time. There's a fog bell. I don't know, but I wonder if this is some sort of offshore certification when Leopard got the boat Coast Guard certified. Here we go. Let's continue on down into the port hull. And by the way, my name is Peter Rollo, and welcome to Catamaran Mentor. And behind the camera here is Yogi, who has sailed around the world for 6 years now on Coco as well.
Yes.
And we're really enjoying showing you around our Leopard 48. But yeah, back to the action. So we're going down into the port hull, and there's 2 cabins on this side. And 2 showers and 2 heads. And you can see, I'll get you to come around, I'll keep talking, but you have a look in there, Yogi. We can see that this head is being used for storage. You're going to have to come right back to show that. Keep coming back. So we've got storage, electrical parts, and everything in there. So we only use 1 shower on board, and this is a storage shower. But we do use this head. And what we have space here is there's space for a queen size bed here. At the moment we have like a Japanese futon style, which is cotton and very cool to sleep on. Cool temperature, cool to sleep on. And there is a dehumidifier strapped in there, which can be used if the boat's going to be in storage for periods. We've got a hanging locker there, a lot of tool bags, massive parts area underneath. So many parts on this boat. In this video, there's also going to be access to the albums of all the photos, so you can see what it takes to kit out a boat with all the parts and tools. Every part and every tool I've photographed for you guys, so you can see what is required. There is, spare blocks and tackle there, more tool bags. There's a diesel heater control. The air conditioning for this cabin is controlled up there, but there's a diesel heater control here. I'll tell you about the diesel heaters when we're in the engine bay. There's also a vent for one of the diesel heaters there, just down there. Beautiful heat in the cabin.
Fuel tank.
So, just a lovely bed space. I'm over 6 foot tall. There we go. Just beautiful view out here. You could probably show them a little bit. Beautiful view with a long window out to the tropical location. Some of the safety features here. We've got a carbon monoxide sensor. There's actually 2 carbon monoxide sensors in this cabin, one there and one there. And if you walk backwards now, Yogi, I'll show you guys the fuel tanks. Under here is, let's have a look at this. There is a new 40 litre isotemp hot water boiler, and I keep all my spare tubes here, hoses, etc. And then there's a fuel tank behind that. I think I'll come back to show you about the fuel tanks, because that's getting a little bit technical. I want to do all the real technical stuff towards the end of the video. So this is the port rear cabin.
That's right.
Now going forward, there is also a shower and a head here. We've never used this head. we've only ever used it as storage in that area. And there is 2 cabins here. This is pretty much a queen size. Massive storage area under this bed, full of parts, containers, and there's also a smaller cabin in the front there. We added lining to the walls because it was just the fiberglass boat walls. We put carpet on the walls here. I've put a additional fan there, one of the nice Siroccos. This drawer is full of parts, cabinets. Just show you how fussy I am. Again, with the theme of, just check that it's not in front of the camera there. Look at these plumbing parts on board. Plumbing parts. Yeah, we can flick to photos of all of this stuff. And a whole lot of, this is my more heavy tools under here. Screws, buffer grinder, Dremels, jigsaws. We have a bit of wood on a boat just in case you need to bash out some equipment. There's a hole saw set, there's a drill and tap set there. So many parts and tools on this boat. You know, if you want to keep operating in remote places, Tonga, South Pacific, you are days away from spare parts, then everything matters. Self-sufficiency is key. An interesting thing for safety is we have what I call a cutting bag here. I know getting a little bit technical for those that you want the layout. This has got the hacksaws, things to cut away the rig. Probably stand back a bit, Yogi. I've got multiple hacksaws on board because if the rig comes down, it could be bashing a hole in the side of the boat. So the mast has fallen down for some reason, a storm or squall or a failure, could be banging a hole in the boat and it's about to sink you. So you've got to cut it away and just let it go. And you don't want all the lines or the sails to foul your props. And the other cutting thing is a battery powered disc grinder on board, but of course that could have flat batteries or it could stop working, so you've got to have the manual tools on board as well. But again, a good sized cabin. I will demonstrate. And this cabin up here, it's got the asymmetric spinnaker in it at the moment, but that's a good size location as well. Beautiful outlook with the window. There's a carbon monoxide sensor there. Another one there. Hanging locker. I'll take the camera, I'll show you what I've got in here though. And here's the brand new spare dinghy winch parts. Some bags, little containers, you might need that for an oil change or gluing something up. I'd have a whole spare boat for parts and equipment if I was allowed to. So that is this hull. Fire extinguishers, the escape hatch here. We've glued our escape hatches shut. It seems like the escape hatches are more of a safety issue, and Leopards of this size are just not tipping over, and it's more likely that that could flood you. I've got some spare plywood cut to put over it if it failed at sea, but we've glued it shut, and I got the boatyard to help me inspect it last time I was on the boatyard. And going long term in the future, I think it would be reasonable to just glass them over, and then you don't have to worry about them all, and a lot of owners are doing that. But that's a little bit of one of those controversial subjects, and it's a little bit each to their own. Did that finish that area? Let's go down and let's go into the starboard hull, which has one cabin, and it's the owner's version hull. So there's a lot of luxurious space and living down here, which I'm going to show you. So we'll start at the back at the stern and work our way forward in this hull. This is a queen size bed. We've gone with a beautiful, on this side, proper inner sprung mattress, and because it did have some factory size cut across there, but I just put a couple of wooden inserts in there and it's a queen. Like, why would you go and get something custom made? Maybe if you're a little bit vertical challenged, you might need a stool here to get up on board, versus the steps around here. But it's just a queen size mattress. Go to a store, boom, queen size mattress. No boat unique customization, because I'd rather spend the money on a lot of other things on board than mattresses. You could also, some owners have also removed the storage area here, and you can fit a king size bed into a Leopard 48 if you lose that storage area here. So just a nice space. There's me. It's probably better people for you to look at, so I won't pause too long, but that's what the other sailing channels are for. Here we have diesel heater control. Because this is the owner's version, there is a air conditioning control there, a hanging locker. Again, going with the long-term liveaboard offshore boat, we've got some really significant medical gear here. There's a leg splint. There is an emergency stretcher carrier here. There is a full offshore medical kit here, and this includes everything you need for sort of 24 to 36 hours of coverage. Again, just so comforting to have this on board, all with a clear layout and books of what to use. And we did a course to go with this kit, and really if you had a doctor on the end of a WhatsApp phone call or emergency doctor plus this kit, we can staple up people's stitches, we can stitch, we've got strong enough painkillers for even the most bizarre accidents. We've got IV fluids over there for shark bites or extreme situations like that. There's even this gun that will bang a needle into your leg about here and can put emergency IV fluids in really, really quickly into your system. So we've learned how to use that, and there's all of the medical use in the book. That was proudly supplied by a good company in New Zealand. And then we have our storage bags here. We have our names on it, and it's sort of like Peter. And I've gone for clear bags so you can see what's inside. It's like a pharmacy here. All the bits and pieces you need. Under here, I normally run some glues and lubricants, etc. A little bit of alcohol in there. If we get, this is kind of funny, so I'll show you. We kind of think if you got, there's some rum from the first owner and the second owner in Tahiti. It's actually quite good. You just don't drink it. And got some Jim Beam on board, and we've got these. We just kind of think if you're getting robbed by some bad actors, let them get some cash, let them get some alcohol, nice them to death, make it seem like a gift. Looks fancy. It was cheap as chips. Well, the cheapest stuff in the shop, but looks fancy. Let them feel like they've won, and hopefully they leave you alone.
Sound the alarm.
But that's, we don't sail in places where that's likely, and it's easy to get information nowadays on where those sorts of areas you are, and you just avoid them. So you just don't go near those areas. But if something happened, under here, we'll do a little bit more storage. I'm not boring you with storage. This is a fantastic area. This fits about 11 of these bins, and we fill it up with food, and there can be over a year of food, groceries, tinned foods, etc., etc. Can go under there. Actually, too much though. It starts expiring. Oh, and this is one of my favourite recent additions. This is the owner's version, so it has a couch. But we never use the couch, of course. Do you know what you use it for? Your half dirty clothes pile up there and the washing that hasn't been put away. So we've taken half the couch away. We've got it stored there. But we've put in a 140 litre AC chest freezer. And I absolutely love this thing. The amount of food and meat marine fridges are not actually certified to freeze things down, but this is a full household fridge freezer. Look how thick it is on the side. I chose the thick one, it's a Sharp, and I'm sure it uses less power than the little camping Dometic CFX 95 that it replaced, that only lasted 2 or 3 years. And this thing here in Indonesia was only like $150 US. This is so cheap. If you were to keep it for 5 years and you just wanted to replace it for the sake of it, just replace it. And I'm getting a nice bracket made to go around here. So being an owner's version, we've still got a couch. And we've got a 140 litre chest freezer. We just have ice for Africa and food in there, and our lithium and solar and inverter system handles it with ease. Before a longer passage, what I would do is I would buy, we've got one 220 volt inverter on board. I would buy a small cheap one to back up that 220 volt. If that inverter was to fail, I could just plug it into the batteries and plug this deep freeze into it. So coming along here, I think, Yogi, we can swap sides. So go past me, please. Here's the owner's version desks. I've certainly edited a lot of videos, helped a lot of people buy catamarans from working here. There's a big owner's version door that's a bit clunky, but slides across here and makes this a private hull. It's a bit sort of stiff and clunky, but hey, it works. We don't use that much. We have all the ship's manuals, spare office equipment here. There's a linen cupboard here. There's a lot of under the floor here. I won't actually show, but you can see in the photos. There's your air conditioning pumps, shower pumps, and through hulls. Here's a boost pump for the water maker down here. More through hulls, toilets, aircon, salt water wash down there. There's about this much space down in there. Now, probably one of our favourite things on board is a washer dryer. This is a Hoover 7.7 kg wash, 5 kg dryer. It's a fantastic thing just to have on board. One of the other reasons I really like the owner's version bathroom is just going to the toilet here. The toilet's on the other side is really jammed to get in and out of. And I'm not going to sit on the toilet, you guys don't need to see that. But I'm 6 foot tall, there's a good amount of space in here. It's like a small apartment. And look at the shower, just a proper shower. A lot of space in here. I put this handle in, you can hold on passage a bit better. You can even sit down in here if you need to. Ladies can shave their legs. And with the 2 water makers and the power upgrades, we still watch the power because it's still more maintenance on systems, but we have long showers and we have what we need. We have a shower every day. I do know a Leopard 48 owner that has a shower once a week, and it's like, what? What else is there to say? It's just a good space. In an emergency, you could go out this hatch like this. Right, that's what you see as an owner's version hull in a Leopard 48. And there's 3 categories of catamaran. Let's define them as the holiday or charter boat category. Now that boat to me is a boat that sits on a dock most of its life. It might go to the Bahamas for 3 or 4 weeks. It's, on a longer trip it might go for 3 months. But the owners will return to a house and they'll be like, oh, I'm glad to have a hot shower again. Those boats typically won't come with many extras. They'll come with small battery systems and inverters because the person doesn't need to upgrade them to the comforts needed for a long-term offshore liveaboard. So you'll see them, they're often advertised little used and the best one they've ever seen. I've gone to see boats like this when I'm helping clients and they will be lightly used. The flooring will be in good condition if they've just been a holiday boat. But everything on it's still 10 years old and I just still see refits forever, even on a very lightly used but aging boat. It's still sitting in the sea, it's still corroding. So that's what I called a holiday or the charter category. Charter boats, they may have aircon, they have a generator, but there's no investment in solar, there's no investment in autopilots, there's no parts on board. Yeah, they just haven't spent up. And now you've got a coastal cruiser. You'll start getting a few extras in a coastal cruiser. They might have put in a water maker as well as the original air conditioning and the generator. And you might start to see some upgrading in electrical systems, solar and batteries, but often not. And they won't have many parts on board or tools because it's a coastal cruiser. It goes up and down the coast. They do 2 weeks on a holiday. They go for a few adventures. Something breaks, it's by a major country, still get parts delivered, and that's what I'll call the coastal cruiser. And then there's what I'm showing you with Coco, which we've taken her with the parts required, the comfort required, like that upgraded shelf in the galley, the upgraded bedding, the upgraded power systems, and then there's the safety of life rafts and EPIRBs and additional reefing, and then there's all the tools, spare parts, redundant systems, dual inverters, the added solar to make the generator redundant or less requirement. If we lost the generator, maybe have to cut back a little bit, but our lives would keep functioning. The other thing with a properly set up offshore cruising boat is it's set up for long periods at anchor. You don't have to run to a marina. It's going to save thousands of dollars in costs. We never feel the need to run to a marina to have a hot shower or do our washing. So that's where we start getting our investment back into Coco. So I hope that defines the categories combined with what you've seen on Coco. So let's go take a look out around on the decks and the equipment and the features of the deck area. First thing I'll show you is how nice and wide the decks are. A good amount of space on it. Plenty of handholds here. If I was offshore, I would be clipped in to a line running along the ground, the deck here. Another nice handhold in there. Easy to get past the shrouds. And here we are coming up onto the foredeck, which after months of living at anchor or at sea, we would actually just literally do laps around the boat if we couldn't get off the boat for the day. And it gives you a space to walk. Compared to a monohull, there's just no space to walk around, but you can actually do yoga here. You can lounge on bean bags here, and it's just, such a nice space, but that's why you buy a catamaran for. So to orientate you, here's a dolphin seat. Just nice, isn't it? And look at this beautiful tropical day. But on with the show. In this hatch is the 110 volt high output water maker, and that's on the starboard side, and over here on the port side is the additional forward cabin, the very small cabin or the storage area. And under your feet now, if you slide backwards, this is the generator hatch, and we'll go into more detail with the generator later. And there's anchoring systems in here. And about 800 litres of water in here, and access to the anchor winch, a garden hose, our spare fenders, and under there's a whole lot of spare lines. I'll give you one pro tip while you're at it. I always rinse the anchor on every raise and drop with fresh water. There's fresh water supply here, and I give it a squirt with a salt away product to get the salt off it. And so far our anchor chain is aging really well. We've owned it since 2019. That anchor chain, I bought it in Tahiti to buy a bigger anchor chain to cross the Pacific with. Another little addition here, I'd probably say this looks a little bit ugly, but this is our water catcher. It's a big 20mm hose. And there's just so much water when you're in the tropics in a rainy season coming onto this roof. So I put a big hose in there, hose water, hole through the deck, and that goes straight into the tanks. So I let it rain a little bit to clean the roof before I put that into the tanks. And when I don't want it going into the tanks, it just flushes the bottom of the anchor chain bay for any salt that's building up in there. We have on the deck here, we have our 8-person life raft. Now this was originally in the rear hatch at the back there, which is close to the engines, and I like this area here because it's protected from the sun. It's also the furthest away from any equipment that could catch fire. The generator's well over there, the two engines are over there, all the electrical inverters and batteries are way over there. So I really like the space for the life raft on a Leopard 48 being right there, as far away from fire as possible. Because fire is probably one of my biggest fears. Some other features of up here is I've got a little line cutter. Oh, we've got a boat going by. Wave at the boat. Coconut! Coconut? No? We've got a knife here for cutting a stuck rope or a line. And as you can see, we're currently on mooring here. Got a purling genoa. Replaced the forward navigation light once. I've replaced all the strings on this trampoline once, which is a bit of a nervous job, but once you're doing it, you follow what was there beforehand. And our trampoline's aging well, but I think our trampoline's aging well because I avoid upwind passages like a plague, and I don't bash the boat into the waves. I just sit there and wait for good weather to go, or weather to be on our beam or behind us before we go. So I think that's why our trampoline is aging particularly well. So now we'll come down the port side. Oh, this was interesting. Yogi and Liam would sit here often on passage. If it was their shift, the boat would be on autopilot and little Liam is sitting here playing. And, you know, just a nice space to be. You know, you're up away from the sea, quite a big boat. And I will say this about this area. At night watch, I would often come out here and just stand here like this, and we're in Southeast Asia now, which has a lot of obstacles, small fishing boats, you know, uncharted waters, and often I do a good portion of my shift, 2 a.m, 3 a.m. shift, just sitting here and looking for lights. Or if you saw something on the radar, you might come out here and have a look around and try to really see what's going on. And often fishing boats are the most tricky to get past in the night because they're moving, so you don't know where they're going to move to next. So I started just sort of driving more closer up on them, and then I could see where they're moving, and you know, not totally close, but you see where they're going. So it's an awesome spot for at night. Let's go down this. We'll come back to the forward cockpit and we'll just take you down the port side deck. Here's one of my safety jack lines. I put more of those in when we're going offshore. We'll take you up on the saloon roof in a moment. So here we are, we're going up onto the saloon roof, and we'll show you what we've done to Coco up here. And pass the camera up. Hey guys, let's come up here. You can see Yogi climb up here. Coming up here in the 3 metre seas is always a little bit interesting, but nice and calm today.
Yeah, very nice.
Alright, let's start here. So again, for an offshore liveaboard boat, you like lots of power, so we've got 2 flexi solar panels up here. I wouldn't recommend flexi solar panels for the future. They get hot, they fade out, they can damage the surface underneath a bit. But the good thing for a future refit or update with Coco is all the wiring for the solar panels are in place, and the solar controllers are there. It's all run through the boat, so it'd be really easy to pull these off and just put rigids in place. And quite a few 48 owners since have put rigids here, and it works well with the boom and the sails. We've also got our Starlink here, nicely mounted on a rail mount there. And this is the second aerial, the redundancy aerial, for the second VHF on board. So we've got 2 complete redundant VHS systems. Alright, what's going forward here? If I crouch down, we also upgraded Coco to be able to reef her from the helm. So that required extra clutches and blocks to run lines around, and it also required an extra reef point put into the mainsail. So the sail went off to the sail loft, and we got the extra non-friction ring added to the sail, and put more blocks on deck. So there's some additional Harkin blocks added here, and 2 additional Harkin blocks added here to enable reefing from the helm. So you can be single-handed on passage even with power in the sail, and you can let down the main halyard a bit, let it down, and you can see on the line I've put a black dot, 1 dot is reef 1, so you let it out and then you can start pulling it down with the reefing lines, which pull from the front and the back of the sail, and you just gently pull it down, and it actually works quite well even with the boat powered up. So it's a good way, it's a good setup to get yourself out of trouble. You're at sea short-handed and you can get some sail down. Here's our mainsail bag. What I've done here is a fresh zip once, and I put a massive, the biggest zip the guy at the shop could buy in the top. But it's the original bag. It's looking a little bit tired, but it's aging okay for now. So we're just walking past more solar panels. Solar. There is 4,500 watts of solar on the boat. I'm going to do a section just on the solar inverter and lithium battery upgrades at some stage later in the video. But while we're up here, here's the rigid solar, and rigid solar is just so much better. It stays cool because it gets airflow underneath it and it doesn't hurt the deck area as much. And this is coming up to, there's another flexible panel here, and here is, I think we'll duck under here. Come under here. Here is 4 500 watt panels, so there's 2,000 watts of solar here, and this makes 2/3 of the solar power on board. And I think our record output is something like about 18 kilowatt hours in one day, and that's getting close to almost being able to run a residential house. So you've got the main sheet blocks here. I've had to replace some of these blocks through there in this pin in Tahiti. I've also had to redo structural rivets in the boom. There's a common failure point at the gooseneck end of the boom, so it just involved drilling them out. I caught them by inspecting them before I went from New Zealand to Fiji. So I inspect. So far, in advance of any problems, I've noticed a crack on the forestay connected to the crossbeam, and we got that welded up. And I've noticed the boom rivets starting to fail before they failed, and I also noticed cracks in our rudder arms once before they failed, and I got those welded up before we left Australia and come up into Asia. So it's always looking, inspecting. In a way, it's a bit of a curse. Sometimes you've got to turn it off and have a break from it, but always looking for cracks, looking for what's about to fail, because I really don't like 2 AM failures. We added a metal device here to put a safety jack line, which if I was up here by myself in a heavy sea well offshore, I would clip into it. What else can I say about this area here? Here is the hatch, which puts good airflow down into the rear cockpit below there. Just a nice view, it's a nice wide space. I think that's this area done, isn't it? Forgot to mention, this is the spare inflatable 2.5 metre tender. It is a tender bit. I blew it up the other day. I'm not sure how much longer it's going to last, but for now it holds air, but maybe water gets into it a little bit. But very easy to replace at some stage. So this is what you call a raised helm or a bulkhead helm, and I think it's just the best designed helm for catamarans, full stop. I just fail to understand why helms are down the back with the whole structure in the way. Some helms are trying to rotate down there to look through and then up to here with some amazingly complex system to maintain, where to me this helm area just does it all. I just can't actually think why it should be designed any differently. You're up high on the boat, so you can see coral if you're entering a coral anchorage. If you're docking, I often dock on the port side even though it's further away from the helm, but I just simply pop down here and back that port sugar scoop up to the dock. Yogi hops off, puts a line on it, puts around the dock, put it in here, brings us over to the dock. We're docked. I can't quite see that port corner, but I've got a good imagination, and if it was really tight, I would put Yogi on that corner. If we're going through the Coral Pass with, you know, meters or feet on each side. So let's get into what we've done to this helm station. Leopard 48 can have a failed bearing here. If that's not done and you buy one, you're probably going to be doing that. This was done just before we bought it by the previous owner, about 2018 for us. And we have 2 electric winches for the Genoa or the main halyard, and we have a manual winch for the main sheet over here. You can put an automatic winch on here, but it sort of puts a big bulky block in there, and of course there's the cost. Hey folks, you do need some exercise. You don't want it to all be too easy on you. So this does the main sheet, moves the big mainsail in and out, and this will either do the Genoa, the asymmetric spinnakers, and its power. I don't think I've got the switch on, but there you go, fuzz. So other features here is we've got a 12-inch Axiom Raymarine chart plotter here. We've got autopilot control heads, so there's 2 autopilot control heads on board, one here and one on the nav station. That is the word, redundancy. Depth, wind, second VHF. Down here we've got the engine controls, we've got the fuel transfer button, we've got engine amps charging the house bank there, and we've also got additional clutches, lines, some nice new sailbags because the old ones were just starting to get a bit tatty down here, and we can reef from here. The Genoa is easy to handle from here. The only place you need to go forward or up to the mast is to unzip the bag to get the mainsail up. Just nice workable area. There's room for 3 on here if you want it, or it's all very easy to do your lines. Work this winch, you could be letting this one out and winching this in with your foot on the button, and what I generally describe this helm location as is I've never been sunburnt, I've never been wind burnt, and I've never had a wave down my neck sailing in 10,000 nautical miles halfway across the Pacific and deep into Asia. It's just such a gentlemanly helm. I've got down there to the galley, it's easy for me to go down. I don't feel like I need to be clipped on here at night. I do put a line just across there just in case you fell out there and happened to tumble over the edge. I can't really imagine that. Or you could sit here clipped on at night. I did when I first started out, but I'll clip on if I'm going out there at night or wake somebody up. We've got the safety netting we've added here for Liam, and just, you know, just a really good workable space. And we've even got a diesel heater vent here. So this Leopard 48 has a heated helm station, and we use that departing New Zealand in a cold southerly, because in that part of the world the southerly is the cold coming up from the Antarctic, and you use that to blow yourself up to Fiji. And we use the diesel heater on that passage for a couple of days out here on the helm, just blissing out, no problem at all. Good workable layouts, and I think, I'm biased, we own this boat. People always think the boat they own is the best, but this is such a great workable helm, fully enclosed with the clears if you want. We've got some washing lines in here, hanging some washing up. There's extra space to dry them off. Good visibility all around. What's there not to like? Charging ports here, 12 volts plug style USB charging there. I would run navionics charts on the chart plotter, and then I would put an iPad here with the satellite view when approaching coral areas. So that's how we use the helm. I don't do a lot of hand steering, let the autopilot do the job, because we've been quite busy as short-handed sailors, so nice to have the autopilots. So I've got the bed out of the way, and I'll just show you the fuel tanks. So these fuel tanks are over 10 years old now, and I've always used biocide diesel bug additive religiously since we purchased a boat, but a little bit of bug in a tiny few areas still grew right on the bottom and ate its way through the bottom of the floors. So I've replaced the floors. These tanks are 2.5 millimeters, but in Australia I put 4 millimeter floors on. One tank was leaking, this tank wasn't leaking, but I replaced the floor anyway because you do things preventively. If that tank on the other side was going to happen, then this one's likely to happen. And while we was at it, I added fuel inspection hatches, and it's a bit of a Leopard cheap out thing to not have fuel inspection hatches, because how do you clean in there? How do you check that there's fuel bug in there? So we've got these nice Vetus fuel inspection hatches on there, and you can get your hand right in there and clean it as well. And there's one per baffle, because there's a baffle through the tanks here, and so it's quite a job to cut those out, clean the tank out and put those in. But that's again the difference between an offshore long-term circumnavigating boat, is now we can check how much fuel's on board visually. And I've done one clean since I put those hatches in 18 months after they were in. And the other things you'll see here is there's the filler, there's generator fuel supply, there's fuel transfer supply from the other tank on the other side, because this side feeds the generator. So this tank uses a bit more fuel to supply the generator, so you've got to send fuel over from the other side. That's there, and it's all just nicely lined out, nice near new fuel hoses. And now it's a good system, as it should be, upgraded to long-term circumnavigating reliable boat. And so many boats have fuel issues from diesel bug, and so that's great, we can check. I also put some insulation on here, because these tanks, diesel engines, they'll take fuel and they send some of the fuel back unburnt, but that is warm fuel. And if you're motoring for 2 or 3 days on a big calm passage, this tank actually gets quite warm and heats up the sleeping areas. So I put some insulation onto that. So we're in the saloon and we've got some electrical parts to show you. But also at this point, thanks for watching, guys. If you stuck with me this long, you must be enjoying the video. So please like and subscribe. I don't make a lot of videos. It's not my first focus, but likes and subscribe certainly motivates me to make more videos. So let's look at some electrical parts. I'm very proud of my electrical parts that I put together for Coco. So here is some, but not all of my electrical parts, but it's an area that I'm quite proud of. Here is a fuse box with all the weird, unusual fuses and relays that you might need on board, like the Class T fuses. These are some water maker contactors, all different fuses. There is one, let's see if I can find it in a rush. I have a little bit of traditional fuse wire on here that I blew the fuse once, my fault, on the dinghy motor, and it's got quite an unusual size, and I just put the traditional fuse wire around the terminals and put it back in the dinghy motor. So all there it is there. So I even have a bit of the old school fuse wire, and I remember grabbing that in some shop or something one day, putting it in there, and then 2 or 3 years later used it, MacGyvered up the dinghy fuse. And look, there's those battery fuses for the lithium battery terminals. There is unique marine blade fuses for the main batteries, all the different size bits and pieces. So that's a very comforting box to have on board. Nothing like that was on board when I brought this boat 6 years ago, not even close. And then there's just more stuff here. Here's spare Victron load controllers that I said for the lithium. There is, I'm just going to pick on some of it here. There is a BMS here for the lithium system. If that goes down, there's a whole complete spare BMS on board. Yeah, other little things like a laser temperature gauge, good for monitoring engines or wiring. But I've taken photos of every part and every tool on board, and they're in the description below this video. It's a link to a Google album, and if you're planning on buying a catamaran or setting up a catamaran yourself, you can look through that and see all my tools. It's all stood the test of time now, out here 6 years of cruising to remote parts of the Pacific and Asia. That is a soldering set. Oh, and there's just so much stuff in here. I'll let you, if you really get a heat gun, is great for your shrink wrapping on your wiring, and also for heating up plumbing fittings to get fittings off the toilet or a holding tank, or to unblock a toilet. You want to get a stuck fitting off, heat it up with the heat gun, battery chargers, just untold stuff in here I'll get. And then there's just boxes of connectors and crimps. Look at the crimp connections all laid out in a nice box, all the different sizes. So hey, I'm a little bit fussy, but for me that brings comfort, and I've used this a few times. One of the generator battery crimps went once, and it's a big crimping tool on board. Just all sorts of goodies, spare switches. Oh, here's one that I'd like to share. Let's say the boat was offshore and hit by lightning and most of the electrical stuff's knocked out. Now if there's lightning around, we'd put an iPad or a phone in the microwave as a Faraday cage, but everything's dead. But far out, the iPad happens to be flat. You've got no navigation. Here is a little solar panel setup that should not be affected by the lightning strike, and you can charge up your iPad, etc., etc., like as a redundant system on top of a system just to keep you going. Actually, in reflection now, this could actually go in the grab bag and go with you into a life raft as well. It's probably a better place to store that, so I might leave that out over there, and that can go into the grab bag. So that's our electrical spares. Right, now we're going to talk to you about our lithium battery upgrades and our inverter upgrades, and why that's important for the long-term liveaboard, and that's for comfort. Power on board means refrigeration, which also means yummy food, and it also means a lot of water on board, and water is what makes life easy to clean the dishes. It's your daily life. It makes it life nice to have a shower. It's water on board means it's nice to hose off the boat. You can keep clean. You can use the washing machine. So good power inverter and solar systems is virtually the biggest thing you can do to the comfort of living aboard a catamaran. So this is the heart of our upgrades. We have 4 Victron Lithium Smart 200 grade A lithium batteries here. That for me was a hell of a lot of money. They're all BMS controlled, each one's wired to a battery management system. So some important things to note when you're looking at a lithium installation like this is that the source of power is fused, and we have the proper fuses here on the battery lugs. So what it does mean is if this shorted out against that, this fuse would protect it. But if you didn't have a fuse there and your fuse was downstream there, and say this shorted against that, then you've got no protection and you've got a lot of amps dumping into the system. So each positive battery here has a fuse. So it could be, when you're assessing catamarans, one of the first things you look for. The next safe thing to understand is people are still confused with lithium and lithium phone batteries. This is lithium phosphate batteries, not lithium ion. Lithium ion is the ones that supply slightly higher power output, but it can get the thermal runaways. There's virtually no incidences of thermal runaways on lithium phosphate batteries. So it's the chemistry of the battery is different. So these are good for marine applications, housing applications, or aircraft style applications. Lithium ion is okay in a car because you can hop out if it catches fire. So this is totals 800 amp hours, which we will use overnight. We will average discharge down to about 45 to 55%, which is not deeply discharging our batteries. So these batteries will likely last 20 or more years at that sort of discharge depth. And that includes full electric galley, multiple laptops, and 3 refrigerations and freezers all running, and the system easily copes with that. It also means the next day, if you're busy, you don't have to panic about turning the generator on, or maybe the generator needs a service. But we don't use the generator much unless it's starting to rain, and then the solar system doesn't produce power. Some more things to look at while we're here is that the cables from each battery are an equal length, because then you can probably stay back on that, thanks Yogi. Each battery needs the same length cables to the bus bar. So this cable is the same length as this one, same length for this one, they're all the same lengths to the bus bars, and that means each battery works the same amount when it's discharging. Otherwise, if they're not equal length, one battery will be doing most of the work, and then that battery will fail a lot quicker. So you've got the two bus bars here, and then all the upgraded wiring has gone down there, and we even installed another uprated on-off switch so we can turn the whole system off here. So that is a reasonably, hey, there's always something you can do better. If you see something we could do better, chuck it in the comments. But this, I believe, is at least a reasonable to upper design system, highly upgraded. So let's go down and look at the inverters and other solar controllers, etc. downstairs. So we're down in the port hull, and I'm just exposing access to one of the main electronic areas with the inverters and the solar controllers in it. So I pulled that panel off. There is a 110 volt inverter here, and I've just got to take this panel off to show you the 220 volt inverter. Alright, we've got that off. So here you'll see the 110 volt inverter. This is around a 2018, and here is the Victron Multiplus 3000. They're both inverter chargers, charge 120 amps each if they're plugged into the shore power or the generator. And so it gives us great redundancy. We lose one, we've still got the other one. We've still got power for laptops, we've got some appliances working, and I would probably even say you could go to 3 or 4 inverters on board, but 2 is certainly substantial. We can even have the water maker running off the solar, lithium and inverters and still cook dinner off the electrical system. And that just reduces the living on a boat. Oh honey, we've got to turn that off because we've got to turn this on, or we've got to start up the generator, warm up the generator, check the water flows going out the back. So the 2 inverters gives us nearly 5,000 or maybe just over 5,000 watts continuous output if we were to load both inverters up. And the wires down from the lithium will easily handle that. Okay, so going with our theme of what makes a good lithium system install. Okay, so the first thing I'll admit is this area is a bit messy, and pay me out on the comments below with the spare wire length, but I did it with an electrician, and some of the work's mine and some of the work's his. We worked together on it, but I actually said let's leave the cables long. It's easier to move. It's easier to put a new end on the cable if one of those has come loose or needs re-crimping, and it's also easier to remove them and push them to one side if you want to add another bit of equipment in. So it's a little bit intentionally messy. I do know my way around here very well, but let's get on and talk about what the good components of a lithium system. So firstly, it is having class T fuses. Lithium can dump so much power out that a traditional fuse could just weld over if there was a short, and the power would just keep coming through. So these are 400 amp each class T fuses here, and that is a major safety feature. So you've got the fuse up there on the battery up there, and you've got the class T fuse down here before it distributes all the power. We also upgraded the shunt from 500 amp hours to 1000 amp hour. We built the system to be able to really handle about 800 amp hours with the wiring, but realistically, I've never put more than 300 or 400 amp hours through it with a couple of bits of equipment on at the same time. The other safety thing here is the BMS module connected to the Victron controllers, and that controls every battery's temperature and charge rate. So if that senses that it doesn't like something on temperature or a cell damage, then it will tell this relay over here to stop charging. See, this is the big solar arch relay sends power down there, goes through that fuse, also breakered up by the solar panels outside, and to this relay here, and the BMS can switch that charge source off. It can also switch on and off loads. There is load controllers down here that can take the batteries on offline if it doesn't like it. So it can control both the charge, this can control both the charge side and the use side of what's coming out of those batteries. This is a 110 volt 3000 kVA, which means 2400 watts continuous inverter and charger, and it's the same for this one up here, except this is 220 volt. So why have a 110 and a 120? Well, the answer for that is we wanted a global boat. As we're going around the world, we want to be able to buy a washing machine in a 110 volt country or a 220 volt country. We can. There is 220 volt and 110 volt circuits all around the boat, and very simple to replace a washing machine with either 220 or 110 volt. But I will say the heart of the boat is 110 volt because the generator stays at 110. The main shore power that could also run all the air cons is 110, and we've kept that way to appeal to future American buyers still. But she's a global boat. You can go anywhere, you can buy appliances, you've got the redundancy of 2 inverters, so I'm very comfortable with the system. There's another solar charger there, there's more solar chargers up here, and these little chargers here, they regulate the power coming from the alternators so that the lithium system doesn't overheat each engine's alternator. Lots of fuses and lots of upgraded wiring, bus boards, etc, etc. And there's actually a heater duct. I've got it removed for now. A diesel heater outlet comes down through here and comes out to do this rear port cabin. I nearly forgot to tell you, but the other one of my major goals, I mentioned plugging in, buying appliances anywhere in the world, there's that. But my other major goal was redundancy from the generator. And that's why we did the big solar, the bigger lithium, and the multi-inverters. So our water maker, our 110 volt water maker, can run off this inverter and the battery pack and the solar and make hundreds of litres each day just on solar power. Also, though, if it was cloudy and we were low on water and we wanted to run the water maker, we'd turn the generator on. The generator can directly charge the batteries and also run the water maker. So you're getting good use out of the engine hours and the maintenance time on the generator by getting charged batteries and water produced. And water is one of your big power draws on board. And of course you can be cooking on that, and you can have the air conditioning on. So when our generator is on, that is very useful for us. If you have a 12 volt water maker, what happens is the generator charges the batteries through your inverter charger, and then because the 12 volt water maker is sipping off your batteries there at 12 volt, it's reducing the charge going into your system. So you've got a big grunty generator on, but you're just lessening the charge rate going to your batteries by running a 12 volt water maker at that time. But having the water maker be able to run direct from either generator or inverter maximizes that system. I hope that's clear. You're welcome to ask any questions. Let's carry on. Okay, here we are in the Starboard forepeak, and this is where the high output 110 volt water maker goes. I'll show you. So we're in here, and this is the water maker control panel, filters, membranes, and high pressure pump. These membranes were replaced in 2021, and I replaced that motor and high pressure pump in 2021 as well, and I just rebuilt that high pressure pump because we used it a lot, so it was due for its like 2,500 hour rebuild, and that's all set for another 2,500 hours. This makes 120 litres per hour, or about 30 gallons per hour. Absolutely love it. It's what makes living aboard house-like. And it's redundancy that we have a 12 volt water maker, and that runs here. I've put a power supply right through the boat, 12 volt power supply here, and it sits just down here, and we plug in the output water here, and that goes to the main tanks. So it's a portable water maker, but it also sits here nicely, semi-installed, and works beautifully if this one needs some spare parts, or you're trying to figure out what's going on with it, which over 6 years it's let me down a couple of times, but on the whole it's made hundreds of thousands of litres of water for us. And under the floor here because we want this to be an in-depth tour, is they're just empty tins in storage. If they were full, I would store them on the deck. And here's all the water maker spares, pre-filters, charcoal filters, and there's another box of water maker spares elsewhere on the boat. And my helper has gone to sleep.
The water is so clear, you can see all the little fishes.
Any turtles?
No.
There's lots of turtles in this area though.
Alright.
Going across to this is a sweet generator. Oh, what we have here for the 12-volt emergency pump that I just showed you before. Here is the outlet hose for it, like a fire brigade clips on there, all stainless steel, all ready to use if you're, in an emergency and you're stressing out. It's ready to help, ready to buy time. And here is portable 7 kg inflatable kayak. Some spear fishing gear. A snorkeling gear bag. And more spare parts. I've got a box here. I love these types of storage cases. This is for the main engines. There's all sorts of impellers, fuel filters in there. And there's another box of filters for it as well. You guys will have access to the parts photos for those of you who want to see all the parts on board Cockpit. Here's the generator parts box. There is a workshop manual, impellers, raw water boost pumps, fuel filters, spare fuel boost pumps. Lots of stuff keeping the generator happy in here and operational. Customs, a little funny note, Customs searched our boat once in Tahiti, like come along the dock, and maybe they thought I was a bit younger to own a boat like this at the time. And when they were searching the boat, they were all friendly, it was all nice, but they spotted these boxes and they got very excited, and I laughed at them and said, sorry folks, it's not what you're hoping for, there's just boring parts in there. In this area there's also spare lines, there's a spare anchor in there as well. And here is our sweet generator. It keeps any water off it. So, catamaran buyers, if you're looking at Leopards for sale, or any catamaran with a generator stored in the front of the boat like this, can get a lot of salt in this area. And this generator cage, when I brought the boat, was very rusty. And if you ask the broker or the catamaran owner for pictures of their generator, you'll probably see a very rusty generator. But what I did was I craned this generator out of the boat, pulled the generator off the cage, went and got the cage sandblasted, and about a 4 or 5 step epoxy paint system applied to it, and that was done in 2021, and it hasn't rusted since. I also redid the sound deadening on here. Look at that beautiful paint. Not a hint of rust on there. And this generator, hey, it looks used, but compared to most boats you see advertised for sale, almost looks brand new. And this is quiet running, makes 9 kilowatt. It can charge the batteries, it can run the water maker, you can turn all the air conditioning on. It's just when you need it, when the sun isn't shining, you need a generator. And we have gone months without using our generator. But then all of a sudden the season changes, or we're stuck in a tropical marina without shore power, and it's the end of the season and the clouds and the rainy season's coming, then it's generator. So I don't believe in the trend of not having generators on the boat. There's also people putting big alternators on boats, my alternators are standard, but big alternators, it's a noisy engine. This just runs quietly, a slight hum in the background. If you're using your engines to charge your batteries while you're living on board in a rainy time when there's no solar, you're making a hell of a lot of noise, and also those engines aren't made to idle and run like that. They're designed to run hot and faster. So hence, this is a very nice generator to have on board. It's a Northern Lights 9 kilowatt. I'll show you some close-ups. There we go. That's Coco's generator. Right, it's time to show you Coco's engine bays, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So we'll go into the port engine because this has got some goodies in here. First thing I liked, I like space. That's why we brought a Leopard 48. But we couldn't afford a super yacht. That's why we don't own a 60 or 70 foot catamaran. So a Leopard 48 is a nice lot of space, but yet not quite getting into super yacht costs or anything crazy like that. So this is a Yanmar engine, and the good thing about it is it's slightly older style engine is there's no ECUs. No ECUs mean no laptops to service it or to fix it, and in remote places that's a major positive. Okay, you're buying a boat with ECU engines, they might be just a little bit more fuel efficient, but you just get so much more complexity. The older traditional diesel engines with no ECUs, they will handle bad fuel and lightning strikes a lot better. If you're looking at a boat with a newer one, so be it. It's just part of the pros and cons. I wouldn't say don't buy it, but this is just one of the pros of the setup we've got. Also in here, we've got the second autopilot, and I'll probably have to film B-roll of this. So I've got the second autopilot, and this second autopilot goes straight onto the rudder arm. Now we have a complete separate redundant second autopilot system. They've got separate sensors, computers, power supply, everything. So if one of our autopilots fails, within 2 minutes we can switch over to another autopilot. You literally, short-handed, you cannot hand steer this boat at night. It's exhausting to even do it for 20 minutes to 40 minutes, maybe with some practice. But if you are 5 or 6 days out and you lose an autopilot and you're having to hand steer and you've only got 2 or 3 people on board, that is going to be a marathon and an experience I don't think you'd ever want to remember. So we installed a complete second autopilot. And this autopilot, because it's straight onto the rudder arm, provides redundancy for the steering cables. The steering wheel brake, the bearing can break, the cables coming through the boat can all break. This autopilot will still steer as it's straight onto the rudder arm, where the original autopilot, still on board, is connected to the back of the steering wheel via a chain. So if anything fails between that and here, then you've also lost your autopilot and your steering. More exciting things that we've done in here is I've strengthened the rudder shafts and the rudder tube housing. Leopards get quite an electrolysis issue in their cheap rudder shaft, and a lot of them have been needing to be replaced anywhere from 8 years onwards. So we've upgraded the rudder shafts to 2205 stainless, and I've added an anode to the rudder, and I've also added an earth wire to bind the rudder shaft into the rest of the system. And as well as that, is we've glassed in and strengthened the rudder tube. Many Leopards are experiencing severe engine room water leaks because the bearing seizes up at the bottom, turns in its hole, and glue simply breaks, and the engine room is flooding. And one Leopard 45 was abandoned on the Atlantic. The engine bay is sealed off from the rest of the boat and the rest of the hull, but there's still access wires and cables through, so I guess if this was flooded, it will be slowly leaking into the hull. But then our emergency pumps plus the bilge pump should help us take some time to rectify it. If you want to be really fussy, a tip would be to go and really make sure every hole drilled or wire or hose run through this firewall and this bulkhead here is sealed up. It's a job I haven't got to yet, but hey, we'll put it on that list one day. The other thing we've added in here is there's a diesel heater added, a ducted fan diesel heater added to each engine bay that blows beautiful, warm, dry air into each hole, right as far forward as the forward cabin, and the bathroom over on the starboard side gets beautiful warm air in it and dries itself out brilliantly after you've had a shower in a winter location. We've used that for 3 seasons in a row, 2 in New Zealand and 1 in Australia. So 2 beautiful 5 kilowatt diesel heaters installed into each engine bay, blowing hot air throughout the boat. They also have dedicated fuel supplies to the main tanks. Another issue with mini boats and Leopard 48s is that when they're going fast, the boat will create a pressure wave and water can come up higher and back siphon itself into the engine and fill the engine cylinders with seawater, and you'll go to start it the next day or at the end of that night's passage and the engine will go chuck, and it's jamming itself up because the engine is full of water, it's corroding, it might break the pistons while it's in there. So we've added in an anti-siphon loop into each engine to mitigate that issue happening. I was helping someone buy a Leopard 48 and I quizzed the owner, and that boat had 3 hydrolock issues. And I've been educating other Leopard 48 owners and similar boats to install anti-hydrolock, anti-siphon devices in their engine bays. The final upgrade, I always had a lot of slipping alternator belts, and on passage I was always in here checking them, and I've added serpentine belts and pulleys to the standard alternators in here. These standard alternators will charge the lithium bank with a DC to DC converter, making sure they don't overheat on the way. But I'm happy with standard alternators. Some big alternators would be nice, but with our big solar, a big generator, our standard alts are simple, and we haven't had to go through that upgrade cycle yet. I think that, and other than that, it's just generally saying, follow me down here a little bit. This is, you know, to do an oil filter. Look, there's space to work on. I can get all around the engine. And also, because this boat has its own engine bay, if this engine needs to be replaced or refurbished, it can come straight out here. You're not having to cut into the boat. Quite often on smaller catamarans, the engine is under the bed, which is A, noisier, B, hotter, and C, very hard to replace. Yeah. So yeah, just a good space in here. A pro tip would be to regularly spray your engines with silicone spray, because catamarans do suffer from quite a bit of salt back here. It can leak in here, or maybe during a service you drip a bit of salt, and a lot of the catamarans have very rusted engines because they're back and the waves splash up on the back, and these hatch seals here don't seal very well, so you often look, the brokers won't put the photos on for catamaran engines because they're all rusty and it's all horrible. Mine have a tiny bit, but because I've kept them sprayed with silicone spray, they are looking great and fantastic and aging very nicely. And I just talk to these girls, I love them. You just be very nice to them, keep lots of good impellers, lots of fresh oil, keep that diesel clean with the biocide, and love these engines and they will love you back. Also in here is the Raycor diesel filters for the generator and the main engines, and the raw water strainer. There's an additional manual pump here for when you're changing the on-engine fuel filter or changing the Raycor filter, as you can squeeze some more diesel in there to top it up to keep airlocks out of the system to make maintenance easier. So I won't show you the other engine bay, but it's had the same upgrades as this one, but of course this one's got that extra autopilot in it. And I've redone the sound deadening and the fire deadening on the walls, because once a catamaran pretty much gets to 10 years old, all of that sort of stuff needs to be redone. There's the exhaust outlet for the diesel heater, that's German, and a German exhaust outlet there. Right, Teddy out of the way. In here is some more crucial spares that you need for long range cruising. What happens if you're in Tonga and your anchor winch breaks? Well, that's the end of your cruising. Parts could take 6 weeks to arrive. They could even send the wrong part. The part they've sent might not actually fix the problems. So many cruisers experience a lot of downtime. We've actually had very little downtime because of our planned maintenance and upgrades. So in here is where I keep the spare anchor parts. I have got a complete spare anchor winch gearbox. There is a complete spare anchor winch motor. There is a switch activation button. Also in here is bearings and seals for the next overhaul of the anchor winch. And there is a solenoid or a relay or a breaker, whatever you want to. No, it's not a breaker, it's a relay or a switch. Spare anchor winch solenoid relays. Lots of boats have those fail.
This is where all the money has
All
gone.
parts, and this is Yogi's just made the comment, this is where all the money's gone. But this is also what leads you to, and guess what I've learned? If you never use this, you can go, I've wasted the money. And maybe, but what I've been saying is no, because I've got the comfort cruising knowing that this gear is on board. I can take my family to remote places and enjoy it a lot more, knowing that if something happens to the boat, we can keep the basics working. And here's another little spare wireless up and down switch that can be wired into the system if the other one goes. Parts equal comfort. I'll put all this back. Nice new 2025 hardly used Saloon seating leather, or fake leather of course, but it looks really nice. I think it's probably the third set. The previous owner did some new seat leather and we've done it 6 years later. So the new fake seat leather needs to be done every 6 or 7 years. So here we are back in the saloon, and there's what I call a safety storage hatch right here. And this is where I have all my some of my go-to safety gear. So some of the items in here is some flex tape, stop leak. There could be a split on the hull. You can put this on wet. Just things you can try. There is bungs, flares, or my through hull dowels. If a through hull was leaking, you can cork them up. There's a harness here. There's my emergency escape hatch bits of wood in here. And I'm really proud of this, I've got 2 emergency pump systems. So Coco has 4 bilge pumps, 1 in each engine room and 1 in each hull. And I was like, well, you want to be able to buy yourself time if you're leaking. So I bought this 110 volt swimming pool pump. Look at the hose on that. And the fittings and just how much water that can plug out. So that goes into the 110 volt system on board, and that will just get some water out the boat. But what happens if the 110 volt system's gone down, because that has got some water in it? Well, I've got a 12 volt system on board, and when we're in the generator room, you'll see the huge hose for this outlet of this 12 volt massive roaming bilge pump with alligator clips, so this can go on batteries. This is also lendable. You could come across another boating problem, having a leaking problem in the anchorage or at sea. Here's my pump, you can borrow it. So these are some really good things. Some more stop leak, life jacket spares, stop leak putty that you can mould into a leaking fitting or through hull. A flare gun, there's 2 of these on board. And these are the additional hatch covers I made for if those emergency escape hatches down in the hull fail. So I've made those with 1 each, and I've got the massive screws here to screw them in place. Just prepared. Oh, there's the screws. So this is a little bit of my safety cupboard. And when you're going 7 days out or more into the Pacific, this is the difference on board. This boat come with none of this stuff on board. This is all stuff I've done in my ownership. I believe we brought Coco as like maybe a coastal cruiser. There wasn't any plumbing spares. There was reliance on the generator, and we've taken her from coastal cruiser to circumnavigate. Okay, so here we have our tender, and the features of this is that it's 12 foot long, aluminium rib, and it's got a flat floor in it. The downside of this tender at 12 foot long is it's getting a bit heavy. If you get it stuck on the beach because the tide goes down, you're going to have to go get 5 or 6 guys to help you get it back down the beach. Sometimes the wheels might work. I've got it down the beach once or twice. I think I've had it lifted by locals about twice in 6 years, and I've gone for significant swims because I've anchored it out knowing that the tide's going to drop, and then come back and the tide's in or whatever. It's different when we get back from our day trip, and I've had to swim out to the dinghy. I've done that 2 or 3 times. So that's a 12 foot dinghy. It's got a 20 horsepower 4-stroke on it. The good thing is it's power tilt and it's electric start, which is great for yogi. It was a center console. Now I removed the center console because it's too much maintenance of the controls. You couldn't, this motor you could lift off, take it to the shop. We've done that once since we brought it new in 2020. And you can put it in a van. You don't need to get a trailer. Zatara had to get a trailer once to get his big center console dinghy fixed. Finding a trailer in a remote location is a handful. This could go on a truck. The engine can come off. And you get a lot of space. When I refurbished the fuel tanks, I did that on anchor. I put the fuel tanks in there. I've also had this full of rubbish after being at sea or going on a coastal cruise. And often, the most often, it's full of groceries from big provisioning runs. And if this was a center console, you'd have no space. So I actually removed the center console, and it was a 30 horsepower engine that would be too heavy to lift. I downgraded it to 20 horsepower. But what I'd say with a 20 horsepower is it's good for 2 to 3 adults. If you regularly had 3, 4 or 5 adults, then you're probably looking at a 30 or 40 horsepower that you need. The fuel tank for it's up the front here, and it's got automatic bilge pump. It's got a fuel filter on it, and it's got a spare torch in it. It's got a nav light that goes on there at night. It's got a spare knife. It's got some tape. It's got some tools. It's got a multi-tool, a little bit of redundancy bent in there. And I'd also recommend you have a handheld VHF in there, and you also have a bottle of water in there, because in a remote place it doesn't work. You float off. And my final tip for the dinghy is when I'm going on remote place dinghy missions a long way away from the mothership, and I don't know the tide conditions or the wind conditions, I'll take my Garmin InReach with me, so I've got satellite communications as well as VHF. So remember, guys, in closing, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Remember, in the description below, I've got 600 or 700 photos, all categorized by areas of Coco, and every part and tool on board photographed, so you can use that for planning your own catamaran. And I hope the learning how to assess the catamarans from either a holiday boat, a coastal cruiser, or a full offshore circumnavigator long-term liveaboard stands out from this boat. Of course, boats are a big mix of everything in between, but you can generally put them into that sort of category. So if you would like more videos on how this boat operates, like maybe the equipment, how to operate the water maker, how to run the generator, what sort of problems you're going to get, like maintenance, generally how to cook on board, and then maybe even on to how to operate the boat with instructional videos, please let me know in the comments. And you can also get a copy of my complimentary buyer's guide at my website, www.catamaranmentor.com. So anyway, thanks for watching. Love making another video for you. It's been too long since the last one. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi guys, thanks for watching. As a reward, I offer you a pro tip. The rudder shafts on catamarans often suffer from crevice corrosion or pitting, where the metal of the rudder shaft enters into the rudder. Now, on a survey, when you're buying a catamaran, you can ask for the rudder shafts to be dropped so that your surveyor can assess how much crevice corrosion or pitting is happening on the rudder shaft. And this is a $10,000 to $15,000 problem that is findable with 20 minutes work in the engine bay to undo 4 bolts drop the rudder shafts down and then let your surveyor have a good inspection. Some surveyors would say, well, they don't invasively inspect things, like they don't pull the engine apart to inspect equipment, and that's the argument against it. But hey, it's 4 bolts and 20 minutes per rudder. The boatyard could do it. Ask the owner in advance of the survey that that's your requirement, is on the haul out to drop the rudder shafts. And you'll spot a $10,000 to $15,000 problem that exists on most catamarans over 5 years old. Hope you like that tip. Cheers. And then 2 or 3 years later, used it, MacGyvered up the dinghy fuse. MacGyvered up